So I believe that stress is a killer. I would tell people to simplify their life.
How can we use AI to live longer and work longer?
Wow, I think that's a great one.
Hello, I'm Dr. William E. Morgan, president of Parker University, and today I have a very special guest, Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Doc.
So we're really interested in longevity and living good quality years.
Yes.
And you're really into technology. So how do you see, what advice would you give for somebody who wanted to extend their life or maybe extend their working life?
Well, it's funny. I play on two very opposite pillars in my world. You're right, I am very much into technology, but I'm actually very into OG simplicity. When I think about quality, 20 more quality years, extending life, I actually think about perspective. So I believe that stress is a killer. And I think that's well documented. And even intuitively, I don't need to read the science to know that if you're scared, if you're fear-based, if you're worried about money, if you're worried, that weighs on you. It's heavy.
Yes.
And in fact, to take it even further, I think one of the things we will discover as man over the next 100 years is that the brain is the secondary operating system and that the gut, we talk more about gut health nowadays than we have, but I actually think intuition and the way your gut thinks is a real misunderstood phenomenon. And so to answer your question, I would tell people to simplify their life. I would tell them to detach from monetary things. I would tell them to start becoming more insular with how they feel about themselves, looking for outside validation from the opposite sex or from how many followers you have on social media or how much money you make or how people respond to you about your looks or anything else or your children's accomplishments or grades. I think people need to become dramatically more simple. When I think about extending life, it's very clear to me that there's many physical things, food, there's many of those things, but the one that I'm most fascinated about, and the answer to your question from my perspective, is perspective and leaning more into gratitude and less into envy.
Let's talk about legacy and longevity.
Wow, I think that's a great one. So I talk a lot about this concept of legacy is greater than currency, which is funny because I'm such a capitalist and entrepreneur, so it's a little bit of a curveball, but yeah, I often think about, it's funny that you bring up longevity. Another thing I think a lot about is how many people will show up to my funeral. And so I think being a good person matters. And so I care about my reputation, especially what people say behind my back. In fact, let's use this experience.
Okay.
At this conference, I gave a speech, we've interacted a little bit with your family, now we're doing this. Today, I leave caring more what you think about me than I did yesterday. Yesterday, you knew of me from afar, if at all. Today, we've had some interactions. And I think being gracious and being respectful and caring and doing a good job when you're asked to is important. And so I do think a lot about my legacy. And the way I think that affects longevity is community. One of the things I've really been fascinated about is a lot of the science around what really allows people to live longer and how important community is. I feel selfishness and greed lead to people being very lonely. They may make a couple more bucks, but I feel like their life is shortened and is far less fulfilled. And so I think when you choose legacy, AKA reputation, AKA how you're viewed, how you're thought of when you're gone and while you're around, creates better behavior as a human in humanity, which leads to having more endearment. Just even looking around this room, for everybody who can't see this on the camera, there's people that came up to me in line prior to my talk and had nice things to say. That is feeding my system. That's feeding my soul. It's feeding my energy. It makes me happy. Those things matter for longevity. And so I think being a better person, being the bigger person in tough situations, I think these things lend themselves to a longer and more importantly, quality years. I like what you said before we got here. No, Gary, we're not talking about the most advanced science to live to 120. What I think you're saying is 70 to 90, 60 to 80, 50 to 70. I believe when you're leaning on good behavior, you're living a much more enriched life. You're having dinner with 5 couples down in Florida in your 70s, not one. And I think those things matter, and I'm a big believer in it.
So how important is it to be authentic to those you communicate with as you age?
Well, I'm a big believer that the ones that aren't authentic tend to get exposed. They start to have, resentment from the people around them. None of us want to be, tricked. There's not a person in this room nor behind the camera that watches this one day that enjoys when somebody fooled them or tricked them or, roped them into something. And so, I think authenticity matters. And that's different than candor. Ironically, you just saw me on stage. That is the most candorous version of me. But Caleb and Dustin are here on my team, and they'll tell you the least candorous version of me is actually to them, because once I love my employee, it's kind of hard for me to give critical feedback. Ironically, it's crazy. That version, killer. It took me I'm now 49. It took me into my mid 40s. So this is a recent phenomenon. I'm still just okay. So authenticity is very important, but it needs to be matched with action. And so you have to back up your authenticity with candor. Those become healthy relationships, one that can really withstand the ups and downs of life and ones that will really enrich your life in your older age.
So we know that when people retire, a lot of them their health declines real quickly. So people are living longer, they're working longer. How can we use AI to live longer and work longer?
So AI is such a profound technology. First, I believe the single biggest thing that AI will do when it's all said and done is map all of us so deeply with its technology that, don't forget, the human body is more similar to computers than we realize. We're going to be able to use AI technology. I look around this room and we know that certain things are good and certain things are bad, but we also know that some people smoke 5 packs a day for 30 years and never get lung cancer, and somebody else who's never smoked once. So the way our chemicals and our genes react to different environments, different substances, chemicals, so many variables. AI is a strong enough technology that probably within the next half century, every person will have a perfectly mapped map of their body. And so you'll know to not eat strawberries, even though it's not obvious, because over a 40-year period, that could create, because you live in Dallas, that could create a problem for you. So I think it's gonna help us with the knowledge. As far as work, look, it's gonna automate a lot of tasks. A lot of us are gonna be able to be dramatically more productive. You have a whole team here who's filming, then they're gonna edit. I have the same. We are gonna have optionality to do it ourselves because of technology, or our teams are gonna be able to be 10 times more productive. And these are profound advancements, and I'm looking forward to them.
You just identified something we're working on, and some of our researchers are the digital twin. That where you have a digital twin of you, and it can do, like, we know everything about you biochemically, emotionally, and then we can run 1,000 tests, 10,000 tests on you to find the best treatment for ailment.
100%.
And that is coming.
It's so real. Like in my late nights where I decide to get educated on things I don't know, like the depths of science that you all know, it's stunning how much already. There was an incredible article I read a couple years ago. This was early AI, where the top doctors in the world were looking at something and were unable to see something that AI identified immediately. This is profound technology. It's going to help the world. Of course it's going to create disruption. If you're a designer who works in Adobe and you don't have ideas and you just go in there, yes, AI is going to take your job. But the tractor took the job of somebody who just was in the field all day. Things change. Nobody's crying for all the Yellow Pages salespeople that lost their jobs when Google came along.
No, they're not.
And so things change. I think we're demonizing the technology too much. I get it. It's big so that it's scary. But I think for health and wellness, it's going to be a dramatic positive shift. There are many people who unfortunately are going to lose their lives today, that if they had the same life in 10 years, would not, because of the advancements of this technology.
Well, I tell my staff that you're not going to lose your job to AI, but you might lose your job to somebody who understands AI.
It's a tool. Listen, it's a pretty profound tool, but as a human being, you're capable to adjust, right?
Amen.
And that's both in the professional landscape and in health. By the way, Up until 38 years old, I had no health and wellness in my life. I never worked out. I ate very poorly. I had a ridiculous QL because I heard it in my dad's liquor store. But over the last 12 years, something that does not come natural to me, something I still fight. Tomorrow morning, I'll begrudgingly go to the gym. But I adjusted because I had no alternative if I wanted to live a higher quality life. That's how I feel about these business advancements. You know AI is coming. You know it's coming. You can put your head in the sand. I think of AI as a big wave coming to shore. You can put your head in the sand and let the wave crush you, or you can grab a surfboard and ride the wave. And I prefer people go on the offense.
Gary, thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Gary Vaynerchuk, and this is Parker University.